Hello and welcome to Understanding Anxiety, supporting children and young people with anxiety. My name's Carly Norris. I'm a parent and carer practitioner in the mental health support team, and I'll be presenting this with my colleague Karen Laver. Today we're going to cover what is anxiety and how we experience it. We'll talk you through some strategies of how to support a child or young person that is experiencing anxiety, and we'll cover when to reach out for extra support and some useful signposting services. So what is anxiety? Anxiety is an alarm system that's kept humans safe for millions of years. It's a completely normal and healthy reaction, and we don't want to get rid of it. It is designed to feel unpleasant because if it wasn't, we wouldn't react and we wouldn't be able to keep ourselves safe. At mild to moderate levels, it can improve our performance, but it becomes unhelpful when it starts to interfere with our everyday life. Smoke alarm is a good example of explaining how anxiety works to keep us safe. The smoke alarm alerts us to real danger when there's a risk of fire. It detects smoke in the air and sounds an alarm. Like a smoke alarm, our bodies detect the threat of danger too, which triggers an anxious response. However, we all have smoke alarms in our house. I'm sure you've experienced them going off when there is no threat of fire, for example, burnt toast. Anxiety works in a similar way. Our detector can go off when there is no immediate danger, but instead an uncertainty or worry. Whether there is a fire or not, a smoke alarm going off is alarming and can leave us feeling frazzled. This is the same for anxiety.
Hello, I'm Karen Laver and I am also a parent and carer practitioner with the Mental Health in Schools team. So we don't always know that our child is feeling anxious, but we can look for clues in their behaviour. The anxiety alarm system makes us react in a number of different ways, and it will be different for different people. When we were evolving millions of years ago, to keep safe and to survive, we needed to be able to fight, flight or run, freeze or play dead or hide, and sometimes flock, so look for safety by being part of a group. These reactions to threat are driven by the reptilian part of the brain, the first bit of our brain to evolve hundreds of millions of years ago, and it hasn't changed since. So the threats are different now, but the reaction isn't. This part of our brain cuts off other parts, so the thinking part of our brain, because stopping to think about what to do would be a bad idea. We haven't got time to do that. It also cuts off other functions like digestion, and this is all in order that we can be the best fighter or the best runner, or we can completely freeze, or we can flock with the group. So it's taking us towards that safe place. So you might notice angry behaviour, hitting, kicking or answering back. And this could be your child's reaction to feeling anxious. So be clear, they are reacting rather than choosing. They're not choosing this behaviour. You might notice your child running off or avoiding situations. You might notice them going quiet or not being able to think. Or perhaps they don't feel able to leave you. These could all be reactions to feeling anxious. On this slide, we see the behaviour we've just talked about, the behaviour we see, and the feelings that lie underneath that behaviour. So the cause of the behaviour, if you like. The reason we have a picture of an iceberg is that the bit of an iceberg we can see above the water is much smaller than the bit under the water. So this reminds us to remember the big feelings that are causing the behaviour and to focus on them and support our children with them more than we focus on the behaviour. So we've talked about the kind of behaviours that we might notice in children who are feeling anxious and also their feelings. This slide is all about the physical symptoms that children might experience. So we can see there a racing heart. We've got the lungs there indicating that our breathing will be quicker. We've got a swirl in our tummy. Children often say that they are feeling sick when they're feeling anxious. And this is for a couple of reasons. One is that the stomach is not going to be working if we are in an anxious situation. So we're not going to be digesting food because it's not so important to do that. It's more important for us to be able to fight or to run away from danger. The second reason can be that sometimes the adrenaline that enables us to run or fight, and the chemicals that enable us to do that, can sometimes leak into our digestive system and make us feel a bit sick. So children might also feel a bit sweaty, a bit wobbly and jittery, and you can see a little brain with some question marks. That indicates that we can't think straight. When we're feeling anxious, as I said before, that thinking part of the brain will also be sort of shutting off in order for us to fight, flight, freeze or flock, and so it makes us not able to think. It's worth noticing at this point that actually a lot of these symptoms are very similar to excitement as well. So yeah, children might be displaying symptoms and behaviour related to excitement, not anxiety. So this slide brings together some of the symptoms that we've talked about. You can see there we've got the physical symptoms, we've got the feelings and emotions under anxiety, and we've got behaviours. On this slide we've also got unhelpful thoughts. So when we think about worries and anxiety, the first thing we might think of as a symptom is the thoughts that we have. And the reason we've got this swirl in the middle is because actually each one of these things affects the others. So for example, if we have a thought that we're not going to do well in a test, that's going to give us feelings of anxiety. It's going to perhaps give us physical symptoms of feeling a bit sick or not being able to think straight. And our behaviour might be that we avoid going to our test or we freeze in that situation. Equally, if we're feeling particularly worried or sad, then that might lead to us having unhelpful thoughts that we're not good enough or that we're not going to get on well. So each one of these affects the others. Now the good thing about this is that if we just respond to one of these symptoms and try to make it better, it can have a positive effect on all of the other symptoms as well, so those other symptoms can get better. So it's really an invitation just to try one thing to help with thoughts or feelings or physical symptoms or behaviours. And we're going to go on to look at how we might do that now.
So here we're going to talk about what maintains anxiety and what factors affect that. So seeking reassurance or avoiding a situation is a natural response when you're feeling anxious or worried. Seeking reassurance can often be seen in children and young people through double checking things with you, asking the same questions, or asking you to do something like sending them a text to let them know that you've got to work okay. Avoiding situations can be things like not socialising with their friends or avoiding going to school. By doing these things, we're only given a short-term relief. Eventually, that challenge will come back again. And if we continue to avoid or reassure, we're going to get stuck in a cycle of anxiety. By not exposing ourselves to the uncomfortable feeling or the uncertainties, we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to see how we cope in those situations. And those situations are often less scary than we think they are.
So how can we help children with their feelings? A really good way of doing that is with active listening. And the aim of active listening is to help children to feel that we understand how they're feeling. So the first thing to do is to make sure we're listening with full attention. And that means putting down anything that's going to distract us and making a bit of time and space for our children to talk to us. It doesn't mean that we have to be sitting face to face. It could be that we're driving somewhere. It could be that we are walking the dog. That's quite a nice time to have a chat. So our children starts to talk to us about what's going on, and a good way to let them know that you are listening really well and that you are understanding is to repeat back what they're saying. So it's very simple. If they say, I've had an argument with my friend at school, you can just say, you've had an argument with your friend at school. The next thing to do is to have a go at guessing what the feeling is. So they're telling you about their argument, and you might think, maybe you're feeling quite upset about this, or maybe you're feeling worried about the next time that you're going to see your friend. So then they start to get some language about what they're feeling, and they also know that you understand how they're feeling. Another really good thing to add to that is to see if you can match the intensity of that feeling with your voice. So if children have got a really big feeling, then they need to know that you understand how big it is. So for example, if they are feeling upset and you just say, it sounds like you're feeling a bit upset about that, and they're feeling really upset, then they're not going to think that you really understand. So what we can do is we can say, I can hear that you're feeling really upset by that. So it's just a little bit of a different tone of voice, but it really helps them to understand that we get it. We get it's a big feeling. Another thing we can do is we can try giving wishes in fantasy. So it's a nice technique because it helps children to know that you understand how they feel, also start a distraction technique. So it might be that you might say, I bet you wish you could go back to the beginning of the day and you could just rub out that argument and have a totally different day instead. And they might say, yes. And then you might explore, what would you have done? Would you have had the same lunch? No, actually I would have chosen a different lunch. And you just start to recreate the situation. So it's a nice distraction technique as well. I also want to talk about things to avoid doing if you can. So the first one is dismissing feelings. So often when we are worried, people might say, don't worry about that, it will be okay, or try not to worry. And actually, although they're trying to help, it can feel as if they're just telling us that we're wrong about our feelings, and they're dismissing them. They're rushing to reassure us, and actually often reassurance just doesn't work. And another thing that can be a bit unhelpful is asking lots of questions and giving advice. So that can just make us feel on the spot, like we've got to come up with answers. So it's not very helpful. So this technique is really about helping your child to learn that they can tolerate anxiety and other difficult feelings. And that's such a good life lesson, because we are going to experience difficult things in our lives and we need to know that we can manage them. If you'd like to know more, then I would really recommend the How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk series. I just absolutely love these books. There's versions for teachers, there's versions for teenagers and toddlers, and they've got some great cartoons which have got all of these strategies in, and they are a really good way to learn a bit more about this.
So a great way to calm our bodies is by using our breath. So as you can see, there's a few strategies on the screen here. The first one is a breathing technique 4-7-8. What you do is you breathe in for the count of 4, you hold your breath for the count of 7, and then you exhale for the count of 8. If you want to, you can pause now and give that a go. We also have breathing techniques where you follow your breath with your fingers. So as you breathe in, you go up, and as you breathe out, you go down. Again, feel free to pause the screen and have a go yourself. With children, we can use bubbles, whether they are real bubbles or imaginary bubbles, but they really help us to take a deep breath and then control our breathing as it comes out so that we don't pop the bubbles. Lastly, we've got this lovely toy on the screen here, which you can see in my hands. And this is a really lovely way to work with children in controlling their breath. So as they breathe in, you expand, and as they breathe out, you bring it back in. And breathe in, and breathe out. With younger children, you can just use the power of a hug. So while you're hugging the child, if you're controlling your breathing, you'll find that they quite often follow your breath, and that will help calm their bodies. The whole idea of controlling our breath is to send a message to our body that everything is okay. We're calming ourselves down and everything's okay. So there are strategies for soothing and grounding ourselves. So these are good activities to put in your day-to-day life with your children, and see which ones leave them feeling a little bit calmer and a little bit more grounded and a bit soothed, because those are the ones that you will then go to when they are feeling a bit anxious or fractious. So I'll start with the grounding game. We play this a lot in our house. We talk about 5 things that we can see. If the children are feeling a bit anxious at the time, they might not want to name 5 things. So you could start by doing it as a team, and naming 5 different things that you can see between you. And then 4 things that you can hear, 5 things that you can feel, which is really about feeling the environment you're in. So you might be feeling what the fabric is that you're wearing, or the surface of your chair. It's just about reaching out and feeling 3 different things. Now we swap this round slightly in our house. So we think of 2 things that we can smell, and then we go on to 1 thing that you can sense, or 1 thing that you can taste. This is a really good distraction technique as well, because it's quite often that we haven't had anything to eat or drink for a little while, so the children might have to really think about the last thing that they ate or drank. Or it might be that the toothpaste, it might be that the last thing they did was clean their teeth, and that the last in taste in their mouth is mint or fruitiness. Now, other ways to soothe and ground our bodies work really well for children and adults are hugging. So some children just like to sit quietly and have a hug. You might find that your child likes to swing. So if you've got a swing in the back garden, or you go to the park and you find that they are on that swing for quite a long time, just watching the world go by, they might subconsciously be soothing and grounding themselves. So this might, if they're doing that, this might be an activity that you want to encourage when you're noticing that your child is starting to feel anxious or worried. That's the same for if they're in the bath or the swimming pool. If you find that they like to lay quietly in the bath or float, or same with at swimming pool, that might be an activity that you go to. So if they're feeling a little bit out of sorts, you could suggest that they have a bath, go and have a play in the bath for a while. And lastly, we've got activities with our hands. So I've put Play-Doh here. It's a really good activity for children to just get lost in. You can add some lavender oil to it, or some dried lavender leaves to engage their senses as well. You might also like to look up a recipe for salt dough, because quite often we have those ingredients in the house and we can make it if we don't have Play-Doh. You might also like to look at things like fidget toys, or activities that are going to distract our hands and keep our minds busy. These are all lovely soothing and grounding techniques, but I do encourage you to just observe your child or young person and see what they do, see what activities they get engrossed in and they seem calmer doing. So not necessarily sort of overexciting video games or TV, but what do you see them doing that seems to calm them, and you might want to look at encouraging them to do more of that when they're feeling anxious.
We're going to focus now on thoughts, and we've already said that anxiety can have helpful aspects but can also become unhelpful, and it's the same with thoughts. So a worry is basically a thought. Some worries can be helpful and motivate us to take action, for example, revising for a test or getting up earlier to catch the bus. But some can be unhelpful, and especially if they're about things that are out of our control or unlikely to happen. They can get bigger over time without us even noticing, and we get used to them. In fact, we can become so used to them that they become beliefs and we get really attached to them. In the pictures on the side of the slide, you can see some shots of a book called A Huge Bag of Worries. This is a great book to share with your child because it's all about a little girl who's got various worries, and they just grow in number and in size, and she ends up sort of carrying around with them with her, and she can't really get away from them. And a really nice aspect of this book is that it explains that some worries belong to other people and that some are just disappear by being shown the light of day. And she does this with the help of her neighbour, who helps her to sort out the worries. So with worries, the first step is to notice them.
Worry time is a technique for you to help your child to contain their worries. It's a time in the day when they allow themselves to worry, and it might also be a time when you can work through those worries with them. So start by getting a jar or a box or a bag and decorating it with your child and naming it the worry jar. Then, as your child has worries throughout the day, encourage them to write them down or draw them and put them inside the container. Then at worry time, you can sit and go through these worries one by one with your child. Worry time isn't a time to reassure or avoid any situations. It's just a time to listen and understand your child and make sure that they know that you care about these worries. If the worry is something you can do something about, then you can move on to problem solving with your child.
The worry tree is a way of supporting children and young people in managing their worries by sorting worries into two categories. The first one would be a practical worry, so about a current problem, and the second one would be a hypothetical worry, so something that might happen but might not happen. An example of a practical worry might be something like missing the bus. That's something that we can do something about, so we can put in actions to reduce the risk of missing the bus. A hypothetical worry might be like worrying that someone on the bus is going to be sick. So this might happen, it might not happen, and also there's nothing that we can do to stop it from happening. So there's nothing we can do about that one. So then, once we've sorted out our worries, we then can work out what to do with those worries. So as I've said, with hypothetical worries, there's nothing we can do. So distracting ourselves and trying to let go of those worries, perhaps with a phrase such as, whatever happens, I'll be okay, is one way of managing those. But with practical worries, we might want to do some problem solving to work out what would be a good solution. So a nice way of looking at practical worries is the problem-solving octopus. The idea of using an octopus is that an octopus has 8 legs, and on each of those legs we are going to write down a possible solution for our problem. Now, with older children and young people, you might not want to use an octopus. They might like it, but if you don't want to use an octopus, that's fine. just you can make a chart or something like that. So the first part of this is to write down what the problem is in 1 or 2 sentences. So for example, it might be, I've got a problem with going to school, I'm worried about going into school, and include the feelings in there. Like, I feel worried, I feel anxious. You can be more specific, I'm worried about tests, or I'm worried about friendships. Then on each of the tentacles, we're going to write a possible solution, and very important is that we're going to start with your child's ideas. So we're going to ask them what their ideas are for solutions, and we write it down no matter what it is. So, you know, the first thing they might suggest is just not go to school. Sounds like a good idea to them. So we're going to write that down, not go to school. We don't question it or challenge it in any way. Then let's give them another go. On the second tentacle, they might write down, be homeschooled. So they're going to think that's a great idea too. So we'll write down, be homeschooled on the second tentacle. And they might be quite surprised that you're writing their ideas down. And it's a really important part of it to do that. Then you might start adding a couple of your own ideas. So you might write down something like talking to people at school about what might make it easier to go into school. We might talk about getting rewards for going into school or something like that. So we're looking at the different possible solutions. And keep going until you get to 8. So include some more of theirs and include some more of yours. Hopefully there's going to be some in there that you're going to be able to give a try. The third stage is to discuss each possible solution, weighing up the pros and cons before choosing one to try. And it's okay at this point to cross out ones that are absolutely a no for you and ones that are absolutely a no for your child. Hopefully you're still going to have 1 or 2 left on there that you think are possible ideas to try. Stage 4, make a plan. So you pick a solution, think about when you will have a go at it, how you're going to do it, who might help you with it, what will help you to overcome any difficulties. Then we want to make a time to review it, how it went, and decide together what's next.
When there's no obvious request or need for the strategies that we've mentioned, it's really important to try and make a special time with your child. This helps avoiding them creating issues so that they still get that one-to-one time with you. But it also will improve your relationship and keep that open communication. It can be an opportunity to build their emotional understanding and their communication skills as well. So what we recommend is that you put aside 10 minutes of your day to join your child in their play. So whether that's a young child or a young person, it doesn't matter. You join them by their side and you just take part in the activity they're doing. You don't control their play or ask questions, you're just being beside them. And then once you're playing alongside them, you can start commenting on what they're doing. You say, oh, I can see you've chosen the red car. Oh, you're painting your nails red. I'm going to do that too. And by commenting and observing, your child will feel noticed and listened to, and they'll open up more to you. And like I said, it builds on your relationship. So it just builds those strengths to support those strategies when you do need to use them. There are times in a child's life when worries and anxieties are normal. They're a normal stage of their development. So here's a list of different anxieties and worries you might observe in your child at different stages of their lives. Feel free to pause it here and have a look. It might just calm your worries and know that it's just a stage and eventually they'll move on from it.
So here we can see all of the possible ideas you can try to support your children, either with their thoughts. So we've got the worry tree and the worry jar. With their feelings, so we've looked at active listening, with their bodies. We had a number of different ideas to soothe and calm our bodies down. And we've also got the problem-solving octopus, so making a plan when children's behaviour is difficult, or when they're avoiding or seeking reassurance and you want to try to move things on. Because we want to avoid avoiding. Remember that, we want to avoid avoiding, because actually we don't learn that we can get over these worries and we can survive these things. So just choose one thing to have a go at and try it for at least a week. It's not going to suddenly, be magic overnight, probably. Maybe it will, but do give it a good try.
When seeking further help or deciding whether you need to seek further help, please do trust your instincts as a parent. If you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling lost, then to talk to your school or your GP. There's a list here of concerns that you might have, and if you have those, it would be a good idea to seek extra help. So big changes in mood or activity that cause you concern, when your child is asking for help, please listen to them, talk to school and your GP. Things like weight changes or changes in eating habits, self-harm. Feel free again to pause this and have a look at the list. And if there's any alarm bells going off, then please seek extra help.
When you're thinking about approaching a school to request support or talk through an issue, we understand that this can be a difficult step to take sometimes, but schools are very used to talking to parents and carers and to having these kind of requests. So in a primary school, you might be able to talk to your child's teacher or to a TA or maybe the Senko. If you're not sure who to talk to, then ask the school reception staff. In a secondary school, again, you could ask the school reception staff. There might be a pastoral team in your school. There might be a mentor or form tutor for your child, or a teacher that's in charge of a particular year group, or a head of house system. So just whoever you talk to, they will direct you to the right place. If you're not sure about talking to school and you need a little bit of guidance, then you could call a national service like Childline or Young Minds to get a bit of advice, and the numbers are on screen now. And then there's also our team. So some schools have the mental health in school team active, working with children. And so EMHP stands for Education Mental Health Practitioner, and some schools have an educational mental health practitioner working individually with children in schools, and they can take a referral from your family. So our team, the East Sussex Mental Health Support Team, is also called Me and My Mind. So what can we help with? So we support children and families who have got mild to moderate difficulties. So this usually means that your child wishes to have support, that they're having mild symptoms, so symptoms of mental health difficulties which are having a small but meaningful impact on their daily life, or they might be having moderate difficulties, which means that they've got multiple symptoms which make their life much more difficult than usual. More severe mental health problems, such as when people are having symptoms that make their daily life extremely difficult, often require more specialist help. So perhaps via a service such as the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, which is part of the NHS, also known as CAMS. Our service is currently only in 53 schools in East Sussex, so it's not in all schools, but check with your school reception staff or Senko to find out if we're currently working in your school. Before we go, we just want to show you a few tools that can support you. So whatever level of need your child is at, finding things that you can do support are going to make a big difference. So this book, Helping Your Child with Fears and Worries, is a self-help guide for parents. It covers a lot of what we've talked about here, so it's a really good sort of recap of what we've talked about, and also it has a really good sort of structure for making a plan about something that you want to support your child to improve on, and how to sort of help your child to get there. So it might be that you hope that they can worry less, and you can make a plan of how they can worry less. The How to Talk So Kids Will Listen book, so that's by Adele Faber and Elaine Meslish, and that's the one I spoke about earlier. Really good book. And then we've got The Huge Bag of Worries, which is the book I spoke about earlier, which is a great one for reading with children. And then there's some other books which are What to Do When You Worry Too Much, so that's a sort of self-help book that you can use with your child, as is My Hidden Chimp. So both of those books worth having a look. You might be able to find them in the library if you want to have a look on them first. With Huge Bag of Worries, there is actually a YouTube clip of someone reading that, so you don't even need to buy it.
Local self-referral support services include East Sussex Library and Information Service. If you're struggling to find the books on the previous slide, or you'd like a book for adults or young people, you can contact the service and they'll recommend some different books for you. Another service is open for parents. They have online advice. They also run short courses for parents. These can be as short as an hour and a half long, and you can access them online. Another service is Health in Mind. If you're struggling with your own mental health, you can self-refer and have appointments with counsellors, and they also run free courses for adults. These are apps or national websites that might be able to help. So the first one is a text service run by the Anna Freud Centre. You can text this number on the screen and they'll be able to offer you support 24/7. For young people, we recommend Young Minds or The Mix. It's a really good app or website to put onto their phones. Both have a one-to-one chat service on there, but it also just has lots of advice for young people to be able to access independently. There's two apps on here, Mind Shift and Smile in Mind. They are both apps that you need to download, and they will support mindfulness throughout the day. Lastly, there's Cosmic Kids Yoga. So these are really nice small yoga sessions designed for children, often based on children's books or stories that the children can follow along with. They've also started doing Peace Out, which is mindfulness sessions for children and young people where they can do breathing exercises or imaginative exercises to help calm them down and soothe them before bed. Here are further contact details for the apps and the websites that I suggested before. Also on there you can see Karen and myself's contact details and our email address. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us, and we'll either point you in the right direction or answer your questions if we can. Thank you for listening to our workshop. We hope it's been helpful for you. Take care.